Before the sun even thought about rising over the rural South, a quiet rhythm was already underway. It was the sound of a pot stirring, the smell of corn and smoke filling the air. For African American families, breakfast wasn't just the first meal of the day. It was a profound act of survival, a statement of pride, and a gesture of love. These weren't recipes you'd find written down in fancy cookbooks. These were stories, whispered from one generation to the next, carried in the heart. This is the story of the forgotten breakfasts that fed a people and nourished a culture. Few things speak to the soul of simplicity quite like cornbread and buttermilk. Imagine a sharecropper's cabin, where money was thin and time was even thinner. Families would crumble leftover cornbread from the night before into a bowl of cold, fresh buttermilk. It was breakfast, sometimes lunch, and even dinner. A humble, perfect harmony of grainy texture and tangy flavor. For the elders, it was a cooling relief in the suffocating summer heat and a comforting warmth in the winter chill. No sugar, no frills, no luxury. It was just the pure, unadorned taste of endurance. Every single spoonful was a powerful reminder that even from scraps, you could sustain dignity. This simple bowl told a profound story. A story of land worked by tired, calloused hands, of mornings that demanded courage long before the daylight broke through. When enslaved cooks and later freed families needed to add flavor and substance to their meals, they didn't head to a general store. They turned to the earth itself. They looked at the ground and saw abundance where others saw nothing. Take dandelion greens, for instance, what most people would just call weeds. For them, these greens became breakfast. They'd be chopped up with a bit of onion, maybe a precious scrap of fatback for flavor, and then pan-fried until the air filled with a smoky, slightly sweet aroma. Dandelions were so much more than food. They were medicine for the body and a symbol of defiance for the spirit. Every single leaf seemed to say, "We can make something beautiful out of nothing." When you looked into that sizzling skillet, you weren't just seeing hash. You were seeing hope, the kind of wild, untamed hope that grows uninvited and is absolutely unstoppable. In the summertime, children would wake up to the familiar call, "Get your pails." It was a signal that the wild berries were ripe for the picking. Blackberries, dewberries, mulberries, they grew wild and free along fence lines and forgotten country roads. Those precious, hand-picked berries would find their way into a pot of boiling water, where little bits of flour dough were dropped in by hand. Wild berry dumplings were far from fancy, but for a child who had picked every single one of those berries themselves, it tasted like pure victory. It was sweet, it was tart, and it was fleeting. A sugary memory of youth savored before the hard work of the day began. My voice softens when I think about it, because each pot held a family's secret. It taught you how to find sweetness even when the world only gave you thorns. As summer faded into autumn and the gardens wilted, the fields turned to brilliant gold, and pumpkins became treasure. They were a gift from the harvest. The pumpkin would be mixed with cornmeal and maybe a touch of sorghum for sweetness, creating the most wonderful pumpkin cornbread pancakes. They were soft, earthy, and they filled both your stomach and your soul. These pancakes carried the distinct flavor of harvest festivals and those special Sunday mornings after church, when families would gather around small, crowded tables, and the sound of laughter would last long after the food was gone. A quiet moment of reflection is needed here because every single bite was a taste of pure gratitude. It was a simple, delicious way of saying thank you to a land that often gave so little, but always gave just enough. You've heard of turnip greens, but what about the liquid left behind after they've been boiled? Some call it pot liquor, that dark, mineral-rich broth. For generations of African American families, that liquid wasn't waste, it was wealth. It was pure gold. It would be sipped warm, often with a piece of cornbread for dipping, and it was known to restore iron, strength, and memory. The elders swore by it. They said it could cure whatever ailed you. Turnip green juice with cornbread was the original energy drink of the South, born from practically nothing, yet giving you everything you needed to face the day. The music swells here because in that simple cup lay generations of wisdom, a lesson to never, ever throw away the good that hides at the bottom of the pot. So, from the garden and the hearth, from the wild fields and the humble kitchen, came powerful lessons of endurance. Every weed, every berry, and every last crumb told a fundamental truth, that the African American table began not with luxury or abundance, but with incredible resilience. As our story moves from the gardens to the fields, it deepens, taking us into a world of sweat, soil, and the unmistakable flavor of survival itself. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Soft fiddle music and the sound of wind over open fields begin. In the long shadow of the cotton rows, the field peas grew quietly, small, stubborn, and full of life. Long before they were a simple side dish, they were survival food. When meat was a rare luxury, field peas took its place. Women would mash them down, season them with just a bit of onion, and fry them into small golden cakes. These field pea cakes became a working man's breakfast, hearty enough to carry him from sunrise all the way through a day of sweat and toil. The taste was humble, yet bold, earthy, smoky, like a whisper of the soil itself. It was a powerful reminder that even in the poorest of seasons, the fields always offered something. You just had to know where to look. Music shifts to a slower, more intimate melody. In cabins warmed by wood fires, mornings often began with a bubbling pot, the contents stirred to a slow, steady rhythm. It was cornmeal, cooked down into a simple mush. Cornmeal mush wasn't fancy, but with a generous drizzle of sorghum syrup, it became pure comfort. Sweet, smoky, and sticky on the tongue. Mothers stirred it with incredible care, feeding hungry children before their long walk to school or a day in the fields. There was no milk, no butter, just patience and prayer poured into every spoonful. That dark, rich syrup came from sugarcane pressed by hand, a true labor of faith. Cornmeal mush was proof that love could make a feast out of almost nothing at all. And when breakfast ended, absolutely nothing went to waste. Those leftover grits from the morning, now cooled and firm, were sliced up, fried until they were perfectly crisp in a little bacon grease and reborn for the next day. Fried grits cakes were the taste of thrift, the beautiful art of turning yesterday into today. They would sizzle in the pan, turning golden at the edges while staying soft at the heart. It was a breakfast that reminded folks that nothing good should ever be thrown away. This wasn't just food, it was a philosophy. Waste not, want not, and most importantly, eat proud. Now, hog maw, the lining of a pig's stomach, might not sound like a delicacy today, but for families who respected every single inch of the animals they raised, it was gold. It was carefully cleaned, boiled, and then fried up with potatoes and peppers, creating a breakfast rich with incredible texture and flavor. The scent would fill the air, strong, savory, and truly unforgettable. In these kitchens, nothing was beneath respect. The hog gave its life, and every part of it was honored in return. Hog maw and potatoes wasn't a poor man's dish, it was a working man's glory. In the later years, as life changed and hens became a regular part of the household rhythm, a new classic was born. Eggs finally met greens in the skillet, and the collard green omelet arrived, a modern blend of old soul and new hope. Imagine chopped greens fresh from the garden, seasoned with bits of smoked meat or savory onion, all folded gently into fluffy golden eggs. Served up with a dash of hot sauce or a side of warm cornbread, it was the taste of a slow Sunday morning on the porch. It was the kind of meal that made neighbors stop by uninvited, because in those days, breakfast wasn't a meal you were meant to eat alone. From the field and the farm came the enduring lessons of thrift, how to stretch a meal, how to make plenty from what little you had, and how to hold on to your dignity even when your pockets were empty. These breakfasts built more than just strong bodies. They built unbreakable bonds that stretched across families and across generations. And as our story moves from the fields to the rivers, a whole other world of flavor begins to rise. Music fades as the sound of rushing water and sizzling oil grows. In the early days, when fresh meat was a luxury, salt preserved life itself. Saltfish, dried and salted to last through the leanest seasons, became a breakfast essential. Soaked overnight to draw out the brine, fried to a perfect crisp, and served alongside Johnny cakes hot from the pan, it was the taste of both the ocean and of human endurance. Those Johnny cakes, those simple cornmeal patties born in Caribbean kitchens and carried north by black hands, became the inseparable partner to saltfish all across the coastal South. This dish told a story of migration, of recipes that crossed oceans, endured the unimaginable, and fed the flame of hope. Each and every bite was a memory of survival, written in salt and cornmeal. Down by the riverbanks, families fished not for sport, but for supper. Catfish, tough, patient, and plentiful, was the prize. Caught at dawn, dredged generously in seasoned cornmeal, and fried to a deep golden brown in sizzling hot oil. Served with a slab of cornbread, it became the weekend breakfast for those who had worked tirelessly all week just to afford a moment of rest. The crunch of the coating, the soft, flaky fish inside, the subtle spice of pepper. Together, they spoke the truth of Southern life. In the Black South, fried catfish wasn't a luxury, it was a victory. It was the kind of breakfast that said, loud and clear, "We made it through another week." In this world of making do, nothing was wasted. Not even the roe, the fish eggs often discarded by others. Fried gently with sweet onions, they created a breakfast that was both surprisingly rich and delicately flavored. The texture might catch you off guard, but the taste would linger on your palate. A meal known mostly to the elders who remembered the art of using everything the land and water provided. Fish, roe, and onions wasn't a crowd pleaser, it was a keeper of wisdom. A quiet, delicious reminder that food is more than just flavor. It's gratitude for what the river gives. Long before pickling was a trendy hobby, it was a fundamental means of preservation. Pig's feet, simmered slow until tender, then soaked in a tangy brine of vinegar and spice, were stored to last through the lean months. In so many black homes, that jar of pickled pig's feet sat proudly on the counter, a symbol of both thrift and exceptional taste. Served simply with a bowl of white rice for breakfast, it was tangy, rich, and deeply satisfying. This dish carried the very flavor of old kitchens, the sharp scent of vinegar steam, the clatter of iron pots, and the sound of laughter that filled every empty space. It was the sound of making do, and of making joy anyway. Then there was souse meat. A cold terrine made from leftover pork parts, pressed together and seasoned boldly with vinegar and herbs. It was another act of preservation that was elevated into a true art form. Paired with a couple of perfectly fried eggs, it became a breakfast of champions for those who woke before the sun to work the fields or the mills. The taste was bold, the texture was firm, and the feeling it gave you was unmistakable, strength in every single bite. This was the heart of the smokehouse, a world where nothing went to waste, where every meal spoke of labor, loyalty, and a deep, abiding love. From the rivers and the smokehouses came nourishment that could outlast time itself. These were meals built on patience, on ingenuity, and on pride. These breakfasts preserved more than just food, they preserved culture. They proved that flavor, that heritage can survive even the hardest of days. But survival isn't the end of the story. Beyond the struggle, beyond just making it through, sweetness waited. A sweetness born from love, from celebration, and from the simple, profound joy of a new morning. Thanks for joining us on this journey. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss what's coming next. We'll see you in the next one. In the quiet of the early dawn, smoke curls from a tin roof shack. You can almost hear the crackle of fat, a slow blues tune humming somewhere in the distance. This is a story of survival, of reverence, of the sacred art of using every single part of an animal. Back in the day, when every creature raised for food was precious, the hog's head was never, ever discarded. It was boiled for hours until the meat was tender enough to be picked clean from the bone. Then it was chopped fine, seasoned with onion and pepper, and mixed with potatoes or grits. This was hog's head hash, a breakfast for those who truly believed in honoring the life they raised. Each spoonful was a taste of the truth of that time. Waste was a sin, and being thrifty was the key to survival. The smell was unforgettable. Rich, meaty, and it filled cabins and fields alike. For many, it was a powerful reminder that real strength doesn't come from having a lot. It comes from showing respect. Now, let's talk about chitlins. These cleaned intestines of the hog were never meant to be elegant, but they were powerful. They were fried until they were perfectly crisp and then scrambled with eggs, creating a breakfast known for both its distinctive smell and its undeniable soul. The chitlin scramble carries the weight of generations of laughter and endurance. It was served at family gatherings, holidays, and on those mornings when you needed a little extra strength to face the day. For anyone who grew up with it, the memory is unmistakable. That deep, pungent aroma of spice, vinegar, and home. Food like this was never just about how it tasted. It was about identity. It was a proud statement that no matter what the world decided to throw away, Black hands could take it and make it meaningful. From the heart of North Carolina down to Georgia, liver pudding found its way onto countless breakfast tables. This was a rich mixture of pork liver, cornmeal, and a blend of spices. It was usually sliced thick, fried in a pan, and served right alongside a piece of cornbread. It was a heavy meal, packed with flavor, the kind of food that would stick with you through a long, hard day's work. Sure, some of the children might have turned up their noses at it, but the elders would just smile. They smiled because they remembered a time when a dish just like this meant the difference between going hungry and holding on to hope. Every kitchen that prepared it understood a simple, profound truth. Nourishment is sacred, no matter what form it takes. And, not every gravy was white or brown. In many Southern homes, a vibrant red gravy made from tomatoes, onions, and whatever drippings were on hand was poured over a bed of rice for breakfast. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfort in a bowl, bright and full of color. This dish beautifully brought together the flavors of Africa, the Caribbean, and the American South. A little spice, a little acid, and a whole lot of soul. Mothers would make it when meat was scarce. It was a dish that filled the plate and the heart at the same time. This was the true beauty of those kitchens. Incredible creativity born from necessity, and a deep sense of joy made from scarcity. And sometimes breakfast was as simple as this: salty, southern, and satisfying. Boiled peanuts and cornbread might sound more like a roadside snack to us today, but for many, it was the perfect breakfast on the move. Farmers would carry a pocketful of boiled peanuts and a piece of cornbread wrapped in a cloth. Together, they provided protein and starch, a taste of tradition you could take on your travels. It was the kind of food that never spoiled and never failed you. Some might have called it poor man's food, but it was this very food that kept rich hearts alive and beating. And when you had a long road ahead of you, that was all that ever really mattered. These feasts of survival were never about glamour. They were about gratitude. Every part of the animal, every single grain, every leftover scrap carried a deep meaning. These meals were born from an incredible resilience, a sacred agreement between the land, the labor, and the love that went into preparing them. As time moved on and new generations came, these foods became something more than just survival. They became memory, and it's in those memories that the powerful story of a people has endured. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through a piece of our history. If you found this story meaningful, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next chapter. We'd love to have you with us.